Stop the cruelty, stop the pain!
Wet market is hard to blame.
We are outside of Tebow Poultry in Ridgewood, Queens right now. This is a live wet market where they have animals. This is where diseases like coronavirus and many other pandemics come from. Places just like this. You know, there's a lot of talk of the pandemic right now, of course, and it comes from places just like this. These are breeding grounds for diseases where there's tons of animals crammed into tiny little cages, crammed conditions where they're defecating on each other, and they have all of these sorts of diseases.
Stop the cruelty, stop the pain!
Wet markets hard to blame.
Stop the cruelty, stop the pain!
Wet markets hard to blame.
Okay, this is Nora Constance Marino. I'm here at Vigil in front of a live animal slaughter market in Queens County, New York City. We are very honored to have Councilman Bob Holden here with us today, who went inside for the first time and was so horrified he's joining the protest. Councilman.
Yes, this is these wet markets must be banned. It's cruel. It is diseased in there. The animals are in very poor condition. Nobody should eat these animals. Nobody should buy these animals. Nobody should go into these wet markets.
Tell us what you saw when you went inside.
I saw 10 feet high cages piled one on top of another. These poor chickens were piled in there, packed in there, and they looked diseased, weakened. They were suffering. It's disgraceful. There's rabbits in there, there's goats, there's sheep. It's freezing in there. It's about 35 to 40 degrees, I would say.
You were moved, weren't you, emotionally?
You can't help it. If you're a human being and you see this, you have to stop this.
If you're a human being with a heart and you see this, you hear that, everyone? Those are very profound words.
This cannot be allowed, and it should not be allowed in New York City. But anywhere it shouldn't be allowed.
Yeah.
These animals should not be treated this way. I mean,
and not to mention the health risks here.
What kind of human beings are we to allow this in New York City? But anywhere, it's disgraceful. No animals, no living being should be treated like this to have to suffer. They're suffering.
You
can see it.
And it's a health risk to the neighborhood.
Yes,
it's just wrong all around.
The health risk aside, and it is a health risk. If we haven't learned that in the pandemic.
Yes.
Then, we deserve what we get. If we don't stop this pandemic is going to continue. Other pandemics, other diseases will really fester in these kind of conditions.
Absolutely.
We cannot allow this. It must be banned immediately. I'm calling on the governor. The governor must step in here, stop this, stop these barbaric markets. That's what they are. They're disgraceful. Let's stop it once and for all, and let's stop it now.
You know, we're just here to kind of wake up the public a little bit and inform them on what's going on and, trying to shut these places down, of course, because we don't want more pandemics to happen. It's funny because a lot of people walk by us and they laugh at us and they mock us and stuff, but literally the reason why we're in this pandemic is because of places like this. So, I understand that people are going to mock and ridicule things that they don't understand, so that's just how it is.
Stop the cruelty, stop the pain!
Wet markets are to blame.
Stop the cruelty, stop the pain!
Wet markets are to blame.
So this is Adita Bernkran from NICLAS. We're here in front of a live slaughter market in Ridgewood. We have New York City Council member Robert Holden with us. We're calling for the shutdown of these markets. There is state legislation pending that would prohibit the operation of these markets because they are dangerous for human health. They pose serious public safety risks because of the inhumane and unsanitary conditions that the animals are kept. While we have a pandemic going on, it's especially dangerous to keep these kind of markets open, operating in densely populated neighborhoods. This one is wedged right in between homes. There are often blood, feces, body parts right out on the public streets. So we've documented so many of these markets operating like this, and they just cannot safely operate in crowded neighborhoods like this. These are breeding grounds for infectious diseases. We just walked in with the council member a few minutes ago, and the conditions were appalling. Many of the birds appear sickly, they're overcrowded, there's different species mixing together. This is how zoonotic diseases spread. And if we don't learn from our mistakes, we are destined to repeat them. So we think this is a serious issue, and we really are calling on the state legislature to shut these markets down, create a task force to investigate, if they can be operated safely. We don't think they can, and we hope that city council members will also support this effort, because this affects their constituents. So many people that live in the neighborhood of these markets do not want them here. We've spoken to many people whose quality of life and health are negatively impacted by these places. So that's why we're here today, drawing attention to this issue.
Stop the pain! Stop the cruelty! Stop the pain!
Thank you. We need more leaders like you that have the courage that you have.
Everybody should go in there at one point and see this for yourself, because it's disgraceful. Thank you.
It's open to the public, isn't it? Anyone can just walk in, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we tried to walk in. They wouldn't. I said, I'm a member of the health committee of New York City Council. Are you barring me? He said, I don't want any pictures taken. I said, what are you trying to hide?
Exactly.
And it's exactly that. If you didn't think you were doing anything wrong, why wouldn't you allow cameras in there? The public's allowed in there.
And that's why, there's an old saying, if slaughterhouses had windows, no one would want to eat meat. That's why these places do operate in secrecy, because they're so horrific when you see what goes on in them.
Every New Yorker should visit one to educate themselves how badly they are. It's just, I can't imagine going into it. It's like going into a refrigerator with live animals who are suffering, piled in cages in very poor condition, feces on top of feces on them. They're just, just put yourself in their position. Put yourself in their position for 1 minute.
And if these were dogs, people would be outraged. But all these animals are the same.
Yes. But they are living beings.
That's right.
Who are constantly suffering, day in, day out. They get nothing. They get no rest. They get piled on top of one another, and you can see they're suffering. They're diseased. Don't eat these animals. Don't buy these animals. They're diseased. You can see it.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you.
We're so grateful for you.
Markets are to blame.
Stop the cruelty! Stop the pain!
Wet markets are to blame.
Stop the cruelty! Stop the pain!
It's really freaking cold out here. I can't even imagine what it's like to be an animal in a concentration camp truck out in the freezing cold, just having the wind blow on you all day. Like, it must be just horrible for these animals. And it happens every single day. There's no more than 5,000 trucks at any given time out on the road on the way to slaughterhouses to have these animals dismembered and mutilated and just killed so people can eat their flesh and their secretions, their milk and their eggs. If you're still eating animal products, I want you to really pause and analyze those choices for just a moment and realize that those choices have many, many consequences. First and foremost, these animals are sentient beings who value their lives and are conscious, have emotions, feelings. They have pain receptors just like humans do. They have emotions just like humans do. Maybe it's not exactly the same. It doesn't matter. They're still sentient beings. We're still sentient beings. We're both animals. It doesn't matter what we look like or not. It matters what's on the inside. We have a heart, a brain, a nervous system, all these things that we have in common. And there's many other consequences of these choices, like when we put animals in these situations, in these farms and slaughterhouses and wet market situations like we have right behind me here, we're creating environments for pandemics to breed. And this is exactly where COVID-19 came from. This is where all these other, SARS, MERS, like bird flu, influenza, all these pandemics, they come from places like this. And there's so many. The CDC says 3 out of every 4 zoonotic diseases or pandemics come from animals. And the United Nations says that the two biggest threats to humanity are climate change and pandemics, both of which are driven by animal agriculture. So there's so many consequences to these actions that we make, and like billions of people are making these choices, and that adds up to a lot. And this is trillions of animals that we're talking about being killed and exploited and tortured and murdered every single year. So humans, so you can have a taste pleasure in your mouth. It just, is it worth it? That's all I want to ask. Is it worth it to have all of these externalities that come with exploiting animals just so you can have a taste pleasure or a convenience, or just it's a habit or whatever, you know? I don't think it's worth it. I think it's quite ridiculous and very selfish in a lot of ways. And, you know, I don't really blame anyone because I used to do this for a very long time, but I was unaware. I was unconscious of my choices that I was making. But once I became conscious, once I became aware, I had to change. There was no other way around it. I had to stop and reflect and look at my choices, and I had to change. There was no other way. And if you're watching this, watch some documentaries about what happens to animals in animal agriculture. Read some books about it or something, and educate yourself on it. No one likes the slaughterhouse, you know? Like, no one wants to see animals be hurt or exploited or killed, and it's just not in any human's nature. Any sane, rational, logical human being would not be for that. So there's just no way around it. There's no two ways around it. The conclusion that I made was to be vegan, and honestly this is the baseline of the society that we should have. The moral baseline is a world where we don't exploit and kill sentient beings for our taste pleasure. It's just human supremacy, it's selfishness, and just so egotistical. We're not the center of the universe. There's millions of other species out there whom of which value their lives just like we do. So just all I gotta say is go vegan, analyze your choices. That's it.